Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well today. This time we are going to be looking at Wild Arms on the PS1. The only thing that I really remember about Wild Arms is how I mistakenly thought that it was part of a series with Thousand Arms. I have no idea why I thought that. I was just a kid, didn't really know that Wild Arms was in its own series and Thousand Arms was just a one-off game. So this game is dark, like a very dark setting. I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but just my first impressions of it were that everybody in this game had kind of given up, with the exception of our three protagonists. And there's a pretty good reason for that. It's explained fairly well in the game, but I was just kind of taken aback by how everybody in this, like all the people, were just sort of resigned to their fate or not really all that interested in dealing with the problems that were going on. They were just really pinning everything on your three protagonists, and it isn't until the end that they all kind of start caring a little bit more. It was kind of weird. One thing that I noticed with this when I was going through the reviews for it at the time, and I'll talk more about that near the end of this, but this game got some not necessarily unfair comparisons, but it got tied to Final Fantasy VII, and I think it kind of benefited from being released around that time. At least released before Final Fantasy VII was released, but within like all of the marketing and everything for that game. So it did get a boost from that in some ways, but it really does stand out on its own as being a really wonderful game. So when you start off the game, it kind of alternates between your three main characters. So you play as Rudy, then you play as Jack, then you play as Cecilia. And that was kind of an interesting way to start the game, and it sort of foreshadows to how the game is going to be played from there on out. It's kind of a cool way of doing things. You learn a lot about your characters right off the bat. You get to talk to Jack and his cool little mouse friend, Handpan, and you find out he's got a grudge against the demons, which gets explained later on. You learn a little bit about Cecilia and how she's a princess studying in a monastery, and just a little bit more about her character, how she's not totally sure about her role in the world, because she's got to be both a princess and also she wants to be something else. You don't learn a whole lot about Rudy, aside from the fact that he can use guns, which are called arms in this game, and that people don't really trust him because of it. It's kind of a cool idea. There is a lot of history that gets dropped on you, so 1,000 years before the game starts, there was a war between humans and demons, and the humans were joined in battle by the Elwas, which I'm probably not pronouncing correctly. It's ELWS. They, I think, are supposed to be elves, but I'm not totally sure on that. Anyway, they were working with humans. They were a very technologically advanced, civilization, and they were able to defeat the demons and their, I guess, mother, for lack of a better term, since that's what the game calls her. So you learn a lot about the war, the weapons that were used by the humans and the Elwas to fight off the demons, and you also learn about the Guardians. The Guardians are kind of, I want to say they're really interesting. They do act as like summoning attacks in this game as well, but you kind of go around and gain their power, and by doing that you sort of like restore hope to the people of this world, because it starts off, like I mentioned, everybody's just kind of given up with the exception of our three protagonists. There are a few pieces of technology that are still working, that are kind of protecting certain things from the demons, so like force fields that the demons can't enter. and you learn that the demons have eventually found ways around it since it's been 1,000 years. And the demons are trying to kill all the guardians, and then they are going to destroy the world. The regular demons are trying to bring, Mother back. When they do that, they find out that Mother is not exactly what they thought she was going to be, and she's going to destroy the world and eat all of the demons. So, yeah, there's that. That's kind of the big twist halfway through the game. And then when you defeat Mother, she kind of merges with Siegfried, who's the big bad guy for the demons, like the regular ones. And then you end up dealing with him later on. So he ends up being the final boss and then takes on 3 forms afterwards, because it's a role-playing game, and that's kind of how these things always play out. It's a pretty cool idea. It's not anything new or anything that you haven't seen before, but it's really cool how they get to that. It's really a fun game, and it's a really great story. I'm not going to spoil everything in here, because there's a lot of character development, especially with Rudy. You find out a lot about him. He's a mostly silent protagonist in this game. He has like 1 or 2 lines because he has to have them in order to advance the plot. And he's got this whole backstory that's really a lot of fun. It's a really cool story on how Rudy got to where he is. And it ties back into the war with the demons, and it's just a really cool kind of twist to the story that I wasn't really expecting, and it makes a lot of sense in hindsight after you get to that point. It's just a really cool thing in this whole game. So yeah, I'll move on to the gameplay, and if you want to find out more about it, go ahead and play this game. Wild Arms has a lot of gameplay elements that are not necessarily taken from other games, but will remind you of other games. All of these are executed quite well. I like the use of the different tools to solve puzzles. So you'll get a grappling hook, and you'll need that in order to get through certain dungeons. You will get a pair of boots that'll allow you to run across, certain pane tiles, so like lava, that sort of thing. You'll get a little watch so you can restart any puzzle that you're trying to solve. You'll get a power glove so you can punch certain things in different areas. So if you need to get a grappling hook across something, you can punch one of the little stanchions that you would attach it to, and that'll go across the pit, and you can get through there. It's a really cool way of doing things. The magic system is it's very different from what I was expecting. It grew on me as the game went on, but when it first started, I was not really enjoying it all that much. As I got into the game, I had a better appreciation for it. There is something akin to like a summoning system from the Final Fantasy games, but it was a little weird. It's tied to the Guardians and the runes that you collect throughout the game, and I never really got like a good handle on it when I was playing it. It's a good reason for me to go back and play this one again, just so I can better understand what the hell I'm trying to do. There are a few spots in this game where you have to switch between the main characters, because each one has a different set of tools that you can use in order to get through the puzzles. There are also a couple of dungeons where your characters are on their own and you need to switch between them in order to just get through the dungeon. It's a really cool idea. I love the way that they do it. It works very well. In some ways, Wild Arms reminded me of Dragon Quest II. The reason is both games have 3 main characters. One of them is kind of your knight. He's just doing all the heavy physical attacks. You have another one who's kind of like a battle mage. He can do magic, but it's not really on par with what your wizard character can do. And it's a little different between those two. That's where the comparison kind of falls apart a bit, because Jack isn't really a mage, but he does have magic points that he uses for all of his sword techniques. Cecilia is your straight-up mage. She does all your magic. Her system of doing it is kind of interesting. It's the thing that sort of grew on me while I was doing this. It created a little confusion for me at first, but it started making a lot of sense the further I got into the game. You'll find these little glyphs throughout the game, and that is what you use in order to create your spells. You need to bind those glyphs to a specific spell on your little grid that you have when it shows up. You go to the magic store, and they will let you do that. So you can either bind it to white or black magic, and then you can figure out which, spell you actually want. They'll tell you what the spell does, and then you can name it anything that you want. It's kind of interesting the way they do it. Like I said, didn't like it very much at the very beginning because I wasn't sure what was happening. As the game progressed, I liked it an awful lot more. Even though I really didn't use that many of the spells, just a couple of them seemed way more useful than others, like heal, armor down, speed down. Those seem to be way better than a lot of the attack magic. It might have been that I got overpowered with Jack and Rudy, but I don't know. It just felt like a lot of the spells weren't as useful as they could have been. So there was this force meter in the game that it can be useful if you figure out how to use all the guardians and everything, and if you're using it correctly. If you're not very smart, like I am, you tend to just stick with what's working. So have Rudy attack with his arms, Jack attack with one of the few sword techniques that is really useful, and then just have Cecilia heal you, and then you can get through everything. I got lost a lot in this game and ended up overpowered, so I didn't use the guardians as well as I probably could. But when your force meter goes up, that's when you can really use the guardian summons to their full effect. It isn't really explained all that well in the game, so look up the manual online or one of the many walkthroughs and they'll do a much better job of explaining it than the game does. I thought the gameplay was very good. It's pretty much a standard turn-based RPG. It didn't feel all that difficult to me. Most of the bosses were pretty easy once you figure out the formula that works for just about every boss in the game. It helped that, the game was pretty funny at times. Its story is very good. The gameplay is definitely not a detriment to anything. The puzzles weren't all that complicated. There were a few frustrating parts, but those were pretty few and far between. Overall, the gameplay is very good. The graphics are pretty good, but it can get a little bit too dark at times. That was most likely because I wasn't playing on a CRT, so that may have impacted the graphics a little bit. There were a few other things to note about the graphics here. Wild Arms is one of the first RPGs for the PS1. Sony commissioned the developers to make it, and this was one of their first RPGs, so you've got a couple of firsts here, which is kind of fun. It was popular enough to spawn an entire franchise, and I'm looking forward to playing those games and seeing how this whole series changes. Most of the game uses 2D graphics. They look very good. I do like the pixel art a lot more than the 3D graphics that they use. There are some, of the better sprites that I've seen. So, yeah, they look very good for a PS1 game from the mid-1990s. The battle screens use 3D graphics, and it's a bit of a visual clash, not too much, nowhere near as much as with Final Fantasy VII, but it is enough to kind of notice. On the battle screens, your characters kind of look like Funko Pops. That was immediately what I thought of when I saw this. I definitely would not have thought that back in 1996, but playing it now, I'm like, yeah, that looks like the Funko Pop that I have sitting on my desk right now, and it's kind of fun to see that and just draw that comparison. I really kind of like it. It's a little cool looking. So the 3D graphics do look pretty good. Some of the enemies are a little odd, to say the least. This was still in the early stages of the console's life, and I think Wild Arms looks very good for a mid-1990s RPG. It isn't amazing by any stretch of the means, but it gets the job done. I do like the 2D graphics more than the 3D scenes. I just like pixel art a lot more, and I think it holds up a lot better than some of these earlier 3D graphic games. The cutscenes all use the 2D graphics in this game, so those look much better than when they tried to do 3D cutscenes. Some of them just didn't hold up as well. It is a very nice compromise to have kind of both styles in the game, and to see both of them done very well. When I first started playing this game, I thought the spells looked okay, but the more that I got into it, the kind of less impressed I was by it. They just sort of, I think for lack of a better term, they get things done, but they are not going to impress anyone. They just are kind of there. Some of them look pretty good. Others, it's just sort of, it's there. It's kind of blah. Overall, I do like the graphics in Wild Arms. It gets creepy at times when it needs to. And overall, the graphics kind of match the tone of the story. It's a little dark, it's depressing, and occasionally it'll be a little bit more upbeat, but not too much. It's a decent looking game. It's got moments where it looks very good, and then others where it's just kind of, middle of the road, gets everything that it needs to get into it. And yeah, it's got very good pixel art, sort of average 3D graphics. It's a good looking game, but it's really just not impressive. Now for my favorite part of pretty much all of these reviews so far, the reviews from, back when this game was released. Wild Arms received good to great reviews upon release. The lowest score was an 8 out of 10, and the highest was a 94 out of 100. It was released at a really good time. RPGs were starting to get a lot more popular on the home console, and yeah, that kind of reflects what people thought about it. This time I looked at Game Informer, GameStop, and IGN. I also checked out a few others, but I'll mostly be focusing on those three publications. Game Informer had 3 people review this game. The average of those 3 reviews was an 8.75 out of 10. All 3 liked the game and said it should hold people over until Final Fantasy VII comes out. They were kind of split on the graphics, but they all liked the gameplay. GameSpot gave the game an 8.6 out of 10. The reviewer loved Wild Arms' story and said it does many things really well. They all praised the different, types of gameplay that were in it, so that was kind of interesting. That's not just a GameSpot specific, but all the reviews had done that. IGN gave the game an 8 out of 10. The reviewers echoed most of what was said in the previous 2 that I talked about. It was seen as just a good stopgap to keep people satisfied until Final Fantasy VII was released. It was kind of shocking to see everybody say that, and I had to look this up and say, oh yeah, this game did come out very close to when that other game was released. Looking over these reviews was fascinating. All the reviewers liked the game. They were saying that Wild Arms was just going to keep people happy until, I guess, the more popular series came out. It was like they wanted to get people excited and expected them to just drop this game as soon as Final Fantasy VII was released. I really hadn't realized that this game was released so close to Final Fantasy VII. And yeah, I think Wild Arms kind of benefited from that, since the market was kind of getting excited for one game, and people used this as a chance to say, well, if you're excited about this, you're probably going to like this one as well. That was basically the message that I got from reading through these reviews. So one fun fact about this game, as I come to an end here, I was playing this on a PS2, and my copy of the game kept glitching at really annoying parts, so I made it all the way to the final boss. Thankfully, I wasn't too far into the fight, but it's rather annoying because you don't have a save spot that's close before you get to like the 3 bosses you have to fight, or 4 bosses technically you have to fight. So I make it all the way to the very last one, and the frickin' game glitches, and it freezes up on me, and I'm just staring at the screen like, oh god, this is bullshit. So I shut the system off because I knew it wasn't gonna unfreeze anytime soon, and then came back to it a day later and beat it because I was just that annoyed that I had gotten that far, and I was like, okay, I need to walk away from this for a minute. Aside from that, and the other times that the game froze up on me, this was a lot of fun to play. It isn't overly difficult, but it is challenging enough to keep you going. There were a few spots where I had to go and refer to a guide because I just did not understand what the game was asking me to do. Specifically at the end, where you keep finding like a fake item that you need to put into place in order to advance. That took me a while to get, but that was probably the only one that was really annoying. Everything else was pretty easy to figure out. Anyway, that's going to wrap this up. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.